figuring out like what the tone and voice of the podcast is, and what kind of people we want to have on, and what kind of focus we want to have on the podcast.
It's not really about growth. It's not like we're not like going after the biggest names we can find only. Like we're more than happy to have a person on who makes a tool that only has a few people using it. Like that's totally valid. Hello, welcome to the devtools-fm podcast. This is a podcast about developer tools and the people who make them. I'm Andrew, and here's my co-host Justin in real life.
Hi, everyone.
So this is a little bit of a special episode. Today we aren't going to be talking with anybody else other than us. We're going to take a look back on where DevTools started and how we got here and what we plan to do in the future.
Yeah, nice retrospective episode. We've been doing this for a year, a little bit more than a year now.
Yeah, I think we started in April.
Yeah. So we're getting close there, and it just felt like a good time to look back on everything that we've done and all the people we've talked about, and I don't know, get some history on the podcast, and maybe even talk about where we want to take it in the future.
Yeah, so I think what would be good to start out with talking with is how this podcast even started. It's kind of a funny story. I don't think either me or Justin really set out to make a podcast, or I really even ever thought of making a podcast.
It was more of a joke to start off with, I think.
Yeah, it's very funny how little thought was put into all of this. So around a year ago, I decided to leave my job at Intuit and start seeking a job elsewhere. And the one company that really piqued my interest was a company called Descript. If you don't know what Descript is a video audio editing tool that works based off of a transcript, and it is mainly used to edit podcasts. So as a joke, Justin was like, "Hey, let's start a podcast. What can go wrong?"
Well, there's a little context here. So at that time, I was working at a company called Artsy, and Artsy had its own internal podcast, and we were going through the phase around that same time of like, oh, well, what sort of editing software should we use for the podcast? And I'd seen Descript, and I thought like, hey, first, it's like an amazing use of AI. So like Descript has the ability to like do overdub voices, which we haven't really taken advantage of. But I was like, oh, this is awesome. I definitely want to use this. And then people at Artsy were like, this isn't really exactly what we want to use. We want to use other stuff. I was like, oh, I want a reason to use it. So it just like felt perfect. It's like you're already working there. It's like, why don't we do a podcast?
Yeah. And from there, like we spitballed maybe like one or two ideas back and forth. I was just checking domains, and I'm like, okay, we like DevTools, and we're going to make a podcast, devtools.fm. And it was right there. And we were actually very surprised that it wasn't taken and wasn't already a thing.
Yeah, that pretty much solidified it, I think. It was just like, if you have a really good domain, you just got to do it.
Yeah, the classic developer problem of starting a project by buying a domain. Yeah. That's definitely how we started this podcast too.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we've basically we connected through open source a while back, like 2019 sometime.
Yeah, this is only our second time ever seeing each other in person.
Yeah. The first time we ever saw each other was 2019, end of 2019 at TSConf in Seattle. Yeah, that was
It was.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does. It was a different world back then in many respects.
For sure. But yeah, it just kind of kicked off. And then I think the thing that's like a little bit surprising about podcasts is like there's a lot of tools that a podcast requires to get going, because you have to think about a lot of stuff. It's like, recording is one thing, editing another thing, then like advertising your podcast, syndicating it, like all that stuff.
Yeah, hosting it, like getting it to all the different platforms.
Yeah, it's a lot. Right now we don't do sponsorships or anything. This is totally, we pay for everything out of pocket. I think I should have pulled up the budget sheet before we looked at this, but I think we have like around like $300 a month in just costs.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Just in software subscriptions. So this is like scheduling. So we use SavvyCal for scheduling, which is great. Not necessarily cheapest option, but it is really, really good. And then we use Later
Yeah, we
for
do use later. That price goes up and down depending on how high a quality video I want to put out. But I think we're back on the free tier from that for that one
yeah.
actually.
Then we have a Buzzsprout for
Yep.
syndication. Vercel has graciously sponsored our site, so they do site or hosting for a site. And then Descript, we have a sponsored account from them,
Yeah.
which is amazing. It's also been a really good opportunity for you to like dog food the product.
Yeah. Like before I went to Descript, I was a large advocate for dog fooding your own code, which for our listeners who might not know, dog fooding is where you make a thing, so you use the thing. A place where I used that a lot was in my open source package Auto. Auto uses itself to release itself, and I was using it all the time. So I feel by dog fooding a product, you can really take the stance of a user and create a better product. And so I thought, why not? I'm at a job where we make podcasts. Like, why don't I make a podcast? How bad could that be? And it's been a great experience. Like I know the product better than I could have ever possibly like even fathomed, like if I wasn't making a podcast. And this is kind of like an intuit like line, but it's helped me develop that customer empathy. So like I can really be in the shoes of the customer going like, well, Descript's awesome, but like what are these things that I can do better to make it better? And it's been a really fun experience.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure for a product as complex as Descript is, it's like having that opportunity to sit down with it and play with it. It's not just like, oh, I play with it for a few minutes and I kind of get this. It's like, hey, I'm continually editing podcasts and these are the pain points that I'm feeling all the time.
Yeah, I'd say without Descript, we probably would have never made this podcast. Just first because we would have never had the impetus to create the podcast, but second, like editing a podcast is a lot of fucking work. Like even with Descript, like sometimes it'll take me 4 hours to edit a podcast, and like that's a lot of time.
Yeah, when we started this, it took longer, and we were doing weekly episodes. We did like 10 or so episodes weekly.
Yeah. Weekly release cadence was a bit too much for us. I felt like I was always doing podcast things. Now with the bi-weekly cadence, I can feel like, oh, it's my week off. I don't have to do anything. Time to play video games.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing that we've kind of got into is like you do most of the editing, and I know that it takes up a lot of time. I try to pitch in when I can, but it's like something that like hiring an editor would be super nice.
Yep.
I mean, Descript does make it shorter, but I mean, it's still a huge commitment. So
yeah.
If you're out there thinking about starting a podcast, just know that especially in the early days, it is a huge time commitment at the very least, and a bit of a financial commitment depending on what functionality you want, like how you want to reach your audience, all that stuff.
Yeah. We did spend a good amount of time though at the start just kind of having fun and like building the website. Like before we even made an episode, we were like, okay, let's make a really pretty website. Let's set up a repo with a lot of automation so we don't have to care about any of this. And that was like a fun weekend project or two.
Yeah. So we used a library of Intuit, like the devtools-fm. Yeah. So good. So it re-implements what it would look like DevTools like in Chrome or Firefox or whatever, and we have that, so it looks like an inspector panel on the website. It's like got all the information, and yeah, it's pretty slick.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Another case of like, oh, I'm just going to make a website. I'll follow through with the actual content later.
Yeah. It's been good. It's been good though. I mean, the website's been. We haven't really changed it much since we started it.
It's been chugging.
Yeah. I guess we did add a little bit about our equipment. You have better equipment than I do. Yeah. I need to invest in my setup a little bit more, but
that's something that we had to learn a lot about too, because like while before this podcast I knew about like audio equipment, I guess now I really know about it. Like I had to buy a microphone amp for this nice Shure SM7B. So like I really know the ins and outs of audio now for sure.
Yeah, and there's like software to go along with that. So we use Crisp a lot to filter out audio, unless you're trying to do 2-channel audio like we're doing today, and then Crisp treats somebody as background. So that's no good.
So I'll be doing it in post.
A lot of post work. What do you find? What do you think is the hardest part of editing?
The hardest part, like when the transcript is good, like editing is a breeze. It's just like I'm just like composing what is already there. But since Descript is a transcript-based editing tool, and both me and Justin do have a passion for accessible experiences, having a transcript that is correct is like, it's a huge amount of work, but it's also super important to us. So people in other languages can come and enjoy the podcast too, just by maybe just translating a part of it. And when we have a person who is not of U.S. descent, the predominant AI algorithms to transcribe speech are not trained on non-US English speakers. So if an episode features someone that is not from the US, editing will typically take 2 to 3 times longer. And a lot of people would say, well, you work at Descript, Andrew. Why don't you make that better, or tell someone to make that better? Well, Descript is actually not a transcription service. We use a transcription service, which is something a lot of people might not get once they first look at Descript. Like me, even, I was like, oh, they make really good transcription AI and some of that overdub API AI, but nope, that's all a third party. So if you want to implement transcription in your service, rev.ai is pretty okay, except for US speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this is a classic like bias and AI thing, right? It's interesting that AI systems often just have the same biases that the people implementing them have, like for better or worse.
Even if you don't know about them, like the people implementing those probably wasn't thinking about that. They're just like, let's get a lot of data. That data will be good enough.
And broadly, this is why diverse teams are important. We're getting off on some big tangents here, but yeah, because you might not have the perspective to see all the things that you're missing. Yeah, and that's important. Yeah, editing transcripts and getting those correct is important, but it's also hard, and it's like easy to miss a lot of stuff because you have to think. It's like you could get it 100% correct and spend 5-6 hours on it easy, but spending all that time isn't always viable. So
yeah. After transcription, I'd say the hardest part has just been marketing. Marketing is a constant worry. Like, I do take the off weeks off of marketing usually now, just because I don't want to wake up every morning and create social clips. But getting our podcast in front of new eyes is definitely a hard problem and a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. And you've done great work on that. Though. It's like, and services like Later definitely help to syndicate it out to different platforms or whatever. But I mean, making the social clips and grabbing something that's interesting is important and tough. But yeah,
it's definitely been a workflow that I've had to come into. At first, we didn't know what to grab for a clip. We didn't even know we were going to do clips. So now, as part of the editing process, it's almost like even the main point. It's correct the transcript, and then after that's done, be looking for 1 to 2 minute segments that would be good for Twitter and could be good for TikTok.
Yep. Building off the tooltip that Steve left us, it's those little quick snippets on Twitter to get people really excited.
Yeah, it's hard with a podcast though, because he can speed up his UI and show us a cool.
We can't speed up people talking.
Yeah, we can't speed you up, and typically we're not getting a point across anywhere closer than 40 to 50 seconds.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, getting us good sound bites hard. Something that's actually been not as hard is just getting people in the door, just talking to people. It turns out that most people are excited to talk to you, unless they're extremely professional and extremely busy.
Yeah.
There are some people that we would really love to talk to that have a little bit hard time. But
it's been surprising. We had Rich Harris on episode 12. We had Evan Yu on episode 14. So
yeah, I mean, some of that's been made easier by the fact that we both know a lot of people.
Say you're more the connection machine than me.
Well, I've lived in New York since 2017, and just because I'm there, I get to meet a lot of people in the developer community. So I'd met Vue at some Vue meetups in New York. I'd met Rich, same thing, just going to meetups. And yeah, it's being able to tap into that network has been great, but also just developers generally just like talking, so it's past
us reaching out, it's been surprising and heartwarming how many people have reached out to us to want to come on to here. Like with like barely any, like not even a year's worth of episodes out, people are already like, people that we respect are already reaching out to us like, hey, I'd like to come on and talk about this.
One of the tensions that we have to really kind of figure out is how much we balance like who we invite on versus like who like comes to us. It's like, hey, you know, I'd like to talk about essentially my product, you know, like working on this cool project. I think your listeners would enjoy it. So when we like started the podcast, it was really with emphasis on like, we want to talk to people who build tools and like who are really passionate about building tools, because we're really passionate about building tools. And that was like the kind of, you know, the personal connection behind the tooling is the thing that we're really going for. And podcasts are great marketing opportunities broadly. And like, if people want exposure for their tools, you know, like getting on podcasts is a great way to do that. So we have this tension of like, when someone reaches out to us and they're like, hey, you know, we've got this product, we'd really like to talk about it on your channel. We think your listeners would enjoy it. It's like, do we engage in that? You know, sometimes it's like an easy answer because like we've used the tool and like, oh yeah, this is so cool. Yeah, we want to talk about it. But sometimes it's harder because it's like, oh, we've never used this and we really aren't super interested in using it directly. And, you know, it's like kind of a muddier thing. And I think that's a thing that we still have to work through figuring out, like, how do we approach that, you know?
Yeah, definitely something we still haven't figured out. It's a weird line to walk because it's like you have real people reaching you out to you who are like small time creators really that are just trying to monetize their product. Whereas like if they were just like an open source person with an open repo, we'd be like, oh yeah, come on, why not?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And saying no is hard because it's like we don't really want to say no, right? But it's just like
I never imagined I'd have to say no.
Yeah. That's such a privilege to have that problem. But, you know, it's like, how do we be respectful about this? And I think that's still something we have to work through. It's just like, you know, what does that look like? I mean, obviously, if people come to us, we want to hear them out. We want to, you know, I don't know, we want to share, but it's just figuring out like what the tone and voice of the podcast is and what kind of people we want to have on and what kind of focus we want to have on the podcast.
It's not really about growth. It's not like we're not like going after the biggest names we can find only. Like we're more than happy to have a person on who makes a tool that only has a few people using it. Like that's totally valid. Yeah.
A lot of times it's the person's passion for building stuff that's like the funnest thing. And anytime you talk to someone who's just like really excited to build, that's like
the Steve Ruiz episode.
Exactly.
20 minutes of a man who is just nothing but excited for everything he's talking about.
Exactly. Actually. Yeah. That's amazing. And you know, that's what really brings a lot of joy in like continuing to do this. So
yeah, in those episodes when we're off camera, you just see us like this, like in the footage, just like yes.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how that can vary from episode to episode. It's like sometimes it's like, you know, it's like this is our stuff. This is like amazing, and then sometimes it's like a little bit harder because like somebody can still be passionate about something that you haven't used or like don't know what questions
to ask.
Right? Yeah. So that's a good thing to talk about. We do a little bit of preparation before our episodes. So we try to put together a set of questions in a Google Doc, which we're probably going to stop using Google Doc because permissions are a pain in the butt. But that's been useful just as a organization mechanism, just to kind of collect our thoughts so that we have something to build the episode off of.
Yeah. We say to all our guests, it's a framework for the episode. It's not like the only things we're going to say. It's definitely nice to have like at least 10 points of things we want to go through.
Yeah.
And it's funny how like often we'll be going through this and then the guest just starts answering all our questions without even knowing about them. And it's like, oh no. Slow down.
Yeah. But that's good. And I also love it when like we have such a great conversation that we just completely go off the rails and we start talking about a lot of stuff, because that's like the really fun episodes.
We try to keep each like conversation with the creator about the tool to around 40 minutes. But if the conversation goes long, that's where you get those hour and a half episodes. It's like we blow past 40 minutes. We're like an hour and 10. We're like, okay, we got to get tool tips in. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah. Yeah, and oftentimes they're like longer than what people see because we edit them down. There's a lot of filler words that we take out, just like stuff like that,
Yeah.
and like silences or whatever.
A very contentious topic.
Yeah. We've had a lot of feedback that we do too many edits.
Yeah.
But you want the pacing to be good. So we do put this up on YouTube too, and when you hear an audio edit that like takes out some sound, it's fine, but the video edit the people might jump around or something, and it's like kind of jarring if you're watching the video, but part of it.
Got to make the pie some way.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about us, where we're at, where we've been, where we're going. Yeah. So when we started the podcast, it was when you just started Descript. This is the smallest startup that you've ever worked at.
It's the smallest company I've ever worked at. Professionally as a coder, and even non-professionally as an intern, the only company I've ever worked at before Descript was Intuit.
Yeah.
Like I did work at like a very small like local software company and slow, but you couldn't paint me as a developer on that job. Like they hired me as a software intern, then had me do data entry, and then their database analyst quit, and they're like, "Oh, you can do that, right?" And then I was fired within a few weeks because I did not know how to be a database administrator, and I fucked it up.
Oh, well, yeah.
Who'd have guessed?
DBA is hard. That's hard.
Yeah, they had me shadow a guy for like 2 weeks, and they're like, "Yeah, this will be enough. You can run the operations for us. You college student with 1 year of experience." Yeah,
getting what they asked for.
Yeah. So I was at Intuit. I was writing design system code and a lot of tools around that. But a lot throughout my career, I was like, but look at that full stack over there. Look at that hill to conquer. And I was just like, I wanted to get a resume item that said I could at least do it, because for years I had been interviewing to try to get like more into full stack, and every time people were like, you don't have the experience. And finally I was able to convince Descript to hire me as a full stack, and finally wrote some backend code. Probably wasn't the best code, but now I know SQL a little more. And since going from a large company with a lot of time and a lot of money to get the accessibility and the details right, and then going to a small company where it's a completely different environment, I saw a lot of things that had to change. So as the year progressed, I harped on it more and more. I'm like, design system. And that's what I've been working on for the past 2 months. So that's probably why you've heard a bunch of different tooltips from me around Radix, because I spend most of my day with my code editor open and then Radix open to the side as I try to figure out what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, that's awesome. Design systems are a lot of fun. I've worked a lot in design systems too.
Yeah.
So
it's a fun like tooling space, because like you're really just making code for another developer to use. So you're really just making a tool, but you're having a huge, heavy influence on what the actual product becomes in the end.
Yeah, it's all about constraints and making the constraints real. Building a system for those constraints is a fun thing, because you have this conversation with design. It's like, hey, here's our sort of base intent. And I think the thing that I really love about design systems is it connects you close to design, and you have to give a lot of feedback on the design. So it's like you come up with the constraints and you have to ensure that the constraints are held to.
Yeah.
Even on the design side, we're like, hey, well, actually, having a link here is not normally a thing that we do, because like if you look at these other examples, and then like sometimes it's like, you have to have that back and forth to like change the design to be, apply to the system or whatever.
Yeah, like what's actually a tooltip? That's a big question.
Yeah.
And if you read through the Radix issues, they know exactly what a tooltip is, and they will tell you that is not a tooltip.
Yeah. So I mean, figuring out what those constraints are and where to draw the boundaries are is the fun part, and you make a lot of micro decisions that people upstream don't have to worry about. Right? They have an API that they provided. They have all these primitives that they can use, and it's good to go.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. That's a fun and exciting work.
Yeah.
I mean, and in a way, it's a tool, right? So it is, we're building tools for other developers to do stuff.
Yeah, and then once you're done building the tool, you build tools for the tools. So
yeah,
like,
exactly.
I built a snippet library. I built design token IntelliSense. Like, it goes further and further.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost a DX role, kind of developer experience role, where it's just a lot of like building tools, building utilities, building automations, making the sort of transition from design to sort of product smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, and it centers a lot around documentation, which has been if you could summarize my career, it's just like write better docs. I've written myself 2 different maybe even 3 different markdown documentation generators.
Nice.
So it's a place I have a lot of passion for, and design systems comes into that heavily because, like, for example, at Intuit, our design system documentation was supposed to serve developers and designers too. So like,
right.
There's a lot of thinking that goes into that. And then, yeah, I love JS doc.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. So, wow, where was I when this podcast started? I was still at Artsy at the time. So I was a full stack at Artsy, worked there for a few years, almost 3 years to a day. Really great time. Loved the team. Things changed a little bit at the end of my tenure of Artsy, and I was definitely like feeling pretty burnt out because I was a tech lead at the end of my tenure. And mad respect for all you tech leads out there. It's a lot to juggle, figuring out like how much day-to-day IC individual contributor work do you have to do versus, planning, working with the PM, working with design, pairing with people, unblocking folks, like doing all that stuff. It can be very thankless.
Different role entirely.
Yeah. It's pretty challenging. So I think Artsy has a particularly strong challenge to work through where their tech lead role is voluntary. It's like a volunteer position. It's not like a role. It's not like
no accolades, no salary comes along with it.
Exactly. It's just like, hey, would you like to try this? And a lot of responsibility. But anyway, I was doing that, and I'd gotten really burnt out because this is like, coming up on the pandemic and like going through all that stuff. And I got to the point where I really couldn't cope. So I left Artsy and I just took some time off. I went to the Recurse Center, like literally the next week after I left Artsy. And the Recurse Center is this programming retreat out of New York City. It was not in person, it was remote, but it's a phenomenal community. If anybody's interested, you can find it. I think it's recurse.com. But anyway, if you just search Recurse, you'll come across it. Great unstructured community. It's a free program. You have to do a little interview to get in, but like it's not too bad, and it's super supportive community. So I hung out and did that for a bit. And then getting close to the end of the year, I started the job that I'm working at now, which is at Oxide Computer Systems, Oxide it's an interesting journey. So we're building custom servers. So hardware, software, the whole shebang.
Different than art gallery software.
It's a bit different. Yeah, it's not e-commerce, that's for sure. So I'm loving that experience. I still work on website, do full stack stuff. Oxide's all Rust all the way down, except for our front end, which is TypeScript. So I do a little bit of Rust here and there, which has been fun and a huge learning experience too. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Never a dull moment, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind the last year. A lot of things have changed, but I think they're for the better. Like
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, I find myself working on design system stuff too.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of theming work recently, which has been a lot of fun. But it's interesting that we're kind of both sort of naturally gravitate towards that space.
I've just always loved front end. Like making something blink on a screen is like my hobby, basically.
Yeah.
All new programmers, like, even though I know not everybody wants to code front end, I try to push them towards front end because it's like, do you want instant gratification? Here you go.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I went to school for computer engineering, so I was doing like C++ and stuff in school, but My first like UI development was there's this library called Incurses, which lets you do text user interfaces, and you can like draw boxes and stuff on the screen. So I made a solitaire game that could run on in the terminal, and that was like my first sort of like, I built a UI thing.
Oh, nice.
And it's like starting to connect the dots between like code and like what people can actually interact with. Before that, I didn't know like how could anybody build something like Microsoft Word? I don't understand. And like now you can connect the dots. You can see.
Yeah, my first UI that I developed was actually in my very first quarter of school at Cal Poly. We had a Android development class.
Oh, nice.
And we made an app called Chow Pals, which was find a pal to eat with in the dining hall.
I like it. I like it. That's fun.
Yeah. I didn't have too many other projects after that. Like I spent a very long time in my first year of programming going like, okay, what's the project that I'm going to code? It's going to change everything. It's going to be the startup to kill it all. And I basically came up with Chromecast YouTube playlists. And then Chromecast came out after that, and I'm like, okay, I'll shelve this idea.
Yeah, I'm still looking for that project, the one to change everything.
Yeah.
It's not. That's
for
not
me, it's
thing.
kickback. Just nobody's ever going to use it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing that we found just doing this whole thing is like marketing is everything, you know?
Yeah. And we're definitely not marketers. We are programmers. We like to build the shiny thing and then move on to the next shiny thing.
Yeah. I think the interesting and important thing is like it takes some consistency and dedication. And without you, this podcast couldn't happen because I don't have the sort of consistency and dedication that it takes to just sort of maintain the regular consistency. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that, you know,
I'm good with habits.
Yeah. Together though, it makes it a lot easier, and it's fun. You know, it's fun to do it with someone else. So.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I would have continued if I didn't have like a partner in this because like it's nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of. Like nobody else in my life cares about my podcast, but this guy does.
I do.
Yeah.
Have a vested interest.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, maybe I wouldn't say nobody else cares. But.
Nobody wants to listen.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, cool, you have a podcast.
Yeah. My mom will tune in every now and again.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I don't think she knows. She doesn't know what we're talking about, but she'll tune in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about the future? Where are we taking this? What are we doing?
So we've been talking a lot about different plans to where we want to take this. I think we definitely want to release more, but that is dependent upon us getting an editor because I like having a life too. But yeah, so I think the biggest one we have right now is the Patreon idea. Yeah. Like having a private community where you, the listeners, can participate and influence where the podcast goes in various degrees. And then also, as I said, we'd like to do more content. So that would be the place where you would get it. We'd probably go with the normal podcasting model where it's like you have your public free episode and then you have a private episode just for your subscribers. So I think that's probably where we're going to head. How we get there and what it will look like in the end, still very much up in the air. Yeah. We'll definitely work on the shape of that over time. I think a few things that are like sort of obvious is like to make this sustainable. We're not here to make money. That was never the goal, but like netting zero would be like ideal. And that also includes time, right? Mm-hmm. You've invested a ton of time specifically in editing. And, you know, just me as a part of this, like, I feel very strongly that I don't want you always having to edit because it's like, you know, I get in there sometimes when I can, but, you know, again, it's like, it's a hard thing for me to maintain and like, it's a lot of effort. And then over time, you know, you just get tired of it. You know? Yeah. Like 2 years later from now, I'm going to be like, damn, I've done a lot of editing. Yeah. That time adds up. So hiring an editor is super important. The thing that I don't necessarily like about podcasts is just like, product shilling, you know, it's like, hey, here's this product, you know, use my VPN. Yeah. This week episode is brought to you by blah 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 blah. And you know, it's like I'm not a huge fan of that. So if people enjoy it and people would like to sort of help us, you know, fund it and like, you know, break even, that would be great. And you know, if we end up doing product sponsors or something, I think we'll probably just try to find something that aligns with us, and then with the listeners, like something that's not like, oh God, this again, you know. It's like, I don't know, that'll be an interesting path to walk, but we'll see. going back to what we were talking about earlier with like product-based episodes, we have thought about maybe like instead of making those like unofficial sponsored episodes where we don't get any money, like maybe they are actual sponsored episodes where like you are kind of paying for an advertisement with us. We're still going to talk to the creator in a way that we would with anybody else. We're still like talking shop with the tool maker, but that tool maker has a little more of a vested interest in people listening to the podcast and like going and doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that could be potentially a great balance of just like, we have product inbounds that come, we can talk to the CEO or whoever's like bringing this to us. And then, it's like, yeah, hey, well, we can do a sponsored episode. And I think the thing that's important to me is like, we make it very explicit and very clear, like, hey, this is a sponsored episode, but yeah, I mean, that could be a great thing. It all depends, but like keeping that the soul of the podcast where we're just like really wanting to talk to people who like build things and who enjoy building things. That's important.
Yeah, and something like a Patreon will really help fuel that. Like in having like an active community, I think would be a very, very interesting. So like one of the ideas we were playing around with, and we kind of alluded to earlier, is like we've currently been using Google Docs to like get all the questions together. We share it with our guests. They put their tooltips on there, and then we use that for the episode. Idea that we've been toying with is using GitHub discussions for that instead. So if you remember, you'd get access to this private repo. You could post issues in this private repo saying like, hey, I want you to get this person on and talk about this topic because I think it'd be interesting. And then using that, we can gauge all of your response to that and whether you actually want that. You can go upvote it. And then once we upvote it, Justin came up with this interesting idea where we could use GitHub discussions to host those episode docs. And what that means is, since it's a discussion, you guys could be part of that discussion. If you have a question that you've been dying to ask this creator that we're going to have on, you can easily ask it there. And more likely than not, we'll try to integrate it into the episode.
Yeah, I mean, just figuring out more points for people to get involved, and we have all these great connections. We can talk to all these wonderful people, and then there's a lot of people out there that don't have the same connections, and maybe you can get some questions answered or whatever. Yeah.
We tried merch for a while. I think we'll come back with merch eventually. I wasn't happy with the quality of our merch once I got it. So once we get the quality up, that's definitely there. But like, hey, who's to say? Like maybe in the future we have a lot of people that listen to the podcast. We could do meetups. Like that'd
be great.
That'd be awesome. We could have some of the guests that we've had come talk.
Yeah. We potentially think about doing a Twitter space. Oxide does a regular Twitter space on Monday, and it's been very popular. And that'd be another way to sort of get a guest in the room with a lot of the community. Yeah, a lot of ideas, a lot of things that we could do. I think the point is, though, it's like step one is sort of making it sustainable. And that also means there's a lot of like tax stuff that we have to figure out, and just figure out like how do we even take money, and like where does that go, and what does that mean? It's a big milestone to get through, but that's something that we're planning on tackling soon, which will be exciting. It'll be exciting. It's a little baby podcast growing up.
Yeah. It's amazing to see how far we've come in a year. I don't know what a normal podcast looks like in terms of growth, but I feel like we've been on a very steady uptick. Like each episode grows a little bit more than the last. We get more and more interactions on various social media platforms. So it is going somewhere.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. Another thing that we've sort of discussed in the past, and I would still like to do, is just like make all of our stats and everything very open. So especially once we start, taking donations or getting sponsorships or whatever, making all of that very visible. So people who are like interested in making their own podcast can kind of like come take a look at that sort of thing. It's like, oh, well, how does this work? How do the finances work out? Whatever. And also just like, analytics and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that we can share with the community about like this whole process. Yeah.
It'd be really cool if like another person wanted to come along, start a tech podcast and just be like, okay, I'm forking devtools-fm.
Yeah. Setting up a good model, just like to know like what kind of equipment to get, like what kind of software to use, all that stuff.
Yeah. Because it was not trivial. Like
no, it's a lot of work.
We spent probably a good month or two just like thinking about all this, and then we iterated it on it further. Like a bunch of people in the comments said, "Hey Andrew, your background, it's always so messy. Why is your fiance working on a kitchen table?" That's what prompted this. I got a better microphone. All these things are because of user feedback.
Yeah. So we appreciate your feedback, and we do read it. And some of you throw us a lot of shade about our editing and other things. We hear you.
Yeah, we hear you. It's a hard balance to strike because we have a very informal podcast. Like our conversations are just conversations. Like nobody's performing, nobody's giving a talk, but we still want our guests to like put their best foot forward. So sometimes like we may take out some stutters, we may take out some false starts. Maybe the connection dropped and you guys don't even know, and I have to stitch together the video. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the editing is such a huge part of it because it reduces a little bit of the pressure to like get it right the first time. Yeah. We don't have to stop and re-record. If we mess up in the middle of it, it's fine.
Yeah, I won't name names, but we had one episode where one of our guests, first podcast they had ever been on, they were very nervous. Multiple times while they were answering our questions, they would kind of get frazzled and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So like there are times where we need to like put in a little movie magic, and then you guys are none the wiser. Like I'm sure you couldn't even point out which episode I'm talking about.
Yeah, and for good reason, right? Like that's not a thing that we sort of, we don't want a guest to sort of have to worry about that, right? And we definitely don't substantially edit anything, like remove anything that folks are talking about or whatever, and that's an important point. But just getting through just to make it smooth and flow and like reducing pauses and all that stuff. Which is just the background work that is important to the quality that's hard to see.
But if you're interested in hearing that's you should subscribe, because that's one of the things that we'll probably do is post more raw unedited footage to the Patreon. So if like you really want to hear all those like you can pay us $5 to hear that.
A privilege.
Yeah.
Truly. Yeah. It's been exciting, man. It's been going great. I'm excited for a lot of the conversations that we have coming up. We've got one coming up really soon that I'm really excited. Another Steve.
Steve.
The Steves are good. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Sky's the limit.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And, obviously, thanks for everybody for listening, for tuning in, for giving your feedback. We're both pretty approachable. So if you reach out to us on Twitter or whatever platform you're on, we're probably there and probably active. So feel free to say hi. If you want to request something now, if you would really like us to talk to somebody, you can tweet our devtools-fm account, and we'll definitely see that.
Yeah, we see everything.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Since this is a special episode, we will not be doing tooltips this week, but you can get back to your regularly scheduled tooltip programming with the next episode.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to thank all the listeners that we've had so far. It's been a blast. Every time I get a message where somebody's like, I love your podcast, thanks for the follow, that like it warms my heart. I never thought I'd be a content creator, so having that experience is pretty novel, and thanks for listening, truly.
Yeah, really. This is really just something that, again, we just started just because it felt like a fun idea, and as we've done it, it's been pretty valuable, and seeing people pick up on it and like, I don't know, comment about the episodes and stuff like that. It's been pretty gratifying. So yeah, we'd love to hear from more of you. If you're listening to the podcast and you're enjoying it, please just let us know. Just drop a line. It always helps, and we're always here to make new connections too. And you know what? If you'd be interested on coming on the podcast, we would probably love to talk to you. Just reach out.
And if you're interested in becoming a member and like helping support the podcast, definitely reach out, because we will have news on that soon. We are actively working on it.
Yep. Stay tuned.
Yeah. So that's it for this week's episode of devtools-fm. Be sure to follow us on YouTube and wherever you consume your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.